Rules exist for a reason. Break them again, and you're finished. These cold words echoed in Sarah Matthews' mind as she stood silently in her nurse's uniform, handing over her hospital badge, after 3 years of loyal service. Her only crime? She chose to help when no one else would. It happened during what should have been a normal lunch break. Sarah had been sitting alone in the hospital courtyard, a small grassy refuge tucked between concrete buildings, unwrapping her sandwich and savoring a moment of peace from the chaotic world inside. But then she saw him. An elderly man, wearing a cap embroidered with Vietnam veteran, slowly shuffled through the parking lot. His gait was unstable, his shoulders slouched under the weight of invisible burdens. Something about him made Sarah pause. And then, he stopped, clutched his chest, and collapsed onto the pavement. Without a second thought, she dropped her sandwich, sprinted toward him, and checked his vitals. No pulse. His lips were turning blue. "Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted, tapping his shoulder. Nothing. Training took over. She knelt beside him, locked her fingers, and began chest compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted under her breath, her heart pounding. The asphalt burned against her knees. No one else was around. Just her and a dying man. After nearly 2 exhausting minutes, the man gasped for breath. Relief washed over her like a wave. She gently rolled him onto his side into the recovery position and spoke softly. "You collapsed. Don't move. Help is coming." She flagged down a passerby and asked them to call for emergency support. Within minutes, a hospital team arrived with a gurney and loaded the man onto it. Only then did Sarah glance at her watch, and realized she was 15 minutes late returning from break. Back inside, she rushed to her ward, her scrubs still damp with sweat. At the nurse's station, her supervisor Nancy looked up. "Sarah, where were you?" "Miss Winters is overdue for her pain meds," she said, a mix of concern and urgency in her voice. Something happened." Sarah began, but before she could finish, Patricia Simmons, the nurse manager, rounded the corner with a look that froze Sarah in place. "Sarah Matthews. My office. Now." The walk down the corridor felt like walking to her own trial. Nurses and staff glanced curiously as she passed. Inside the office, the door closed with a thud behind her. "Sit," Patricia said curtly. Sarah sat on the edge of the chair, her hands clenched in her lap. "Miss Simmons, I can explain." "I already know," Patricia interrupted. "You performed CPR on a man in the parking lot during your lunch break." "He wasn't a patient," Sarah replied quickly. "He was a veteran. He collapsed. I didn't have time to." "You performed a medical procedure off-duty, in an area not designated for patient care." Patricia cut in again, her voice cold and clipped. "That's a direct violation of hospital policy. He wasn't breathing. If I hadn't acted, he would have died right there on the pavement. You should have called the code and waited for the emergency response team," Patricia said, folding her arms. "There wasn't time. You put this hospital at risk of liability. What if he had sued? What if something went wrong?" Sarah's chest tightened. This wasn't the first time she'd broken protocol for the sake of compassion. Patricia narrowed her eyes. "This isn't your first infraction. You stayed late with Mr. Jenkins after hours last month. You brought home cooked food for a patient who wouldn't eat. You performed physical therapy with Mrs. Rogers during your break. You mean well, but we have rules for a reason." Sarah swallowed hard. "I have no choice but to issue a 3-day suspension. Effective immediately. Hand over your badge." Her world tilted. 3 days? Patricia. I can't afford to miss that many shifts. My mom's medication. Rules are rules. Break them again, and you're finished. With trembling fingers, Sarah unclipped her hospital ID and placed it into Patricia's outstretched palm. The plastic felt heavier than ever. "You can collect your belongings from your locker. This will go on your record." In the locker room, Sarah sat down on the bench in a daze. Her hands shook as she removed her stethoscope and stuffed it into her bag. 3 days without pay. That meant choosing between paying rent or buying her mother's arthritis medication. There was no buffer left. She pulled out her phone and dialed. "Hey, Mom," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "You're home early," her mother replied on the other end. "Yeah, just a schedule change," Sarah lied. She ended the call quickly before her voice cracked, not yet ready to tell the truth. As she zipped her bag, Nancy entered the room. "Sarah, I just heard. Are you serious? Suspended?" "It's fine," Sarah muttered. "No, it's not. You saved a life. I broke the rules. That's all they see." Nancy lowered her voice. "They're short-staffed and covering themselves. Patricia doesn't want to risk her neck." "I get it," Sarah said. "I just couldn't leave him lying there." Nancy touched her shoulder gently. "Call me if you need anything, okay?" Sarah nodded and walked out the staff exit into the sunlight. The same parking lot. The same moment. But now, the world felt colder. She reached her car, a faded 10-year-old Honda, and unlocked it. That's when she heard a voice. "Sarah Matthews?" She turned to see a young woman in a professional blazer approaching. "I'm Melissa from administration. Dr. James Harrison would like to see you." "The hospital director?" "I've just been suspended. I'm authorized to escort you," Melissa said. "It won't take long." Sarah's heart sank. Was she about to be fired completely? What more could they do to her? The elevator ride to the executive floor felt surreal. Sarah had never been there before. Melissa led her to a polished wooden door with a silver nameplate. "Dr. James Harrison, MD, Hospital Director." Melissa knocked. "Miss Matthews is here." "Send her in," came the deep voice from within. Dr. Harrison stood by the window overlooking the parking lot. "Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair. Sarah sat stiffly. "If this is about the suspension, I understand. But I saw what happened," he said, turning toward her. "From this very window. I saw everything. The man collapsing. You dropping your lunch. Running to him. Performing CPR." Sarah looked down at her lap. "You didn't hesitate," he continued. "Do you know who that man was?" "No, sir. His name is Robert Miller. He's 72. Served 2 tours in Vietnam. He's also my father." Sarah's head jerked up. "Your father?" Dr. Harrison nodded. "If you hadn't acted, he might not have survived. The cardiologist said he suffered a sudden arrhythmia. Immediate CPR made all the difference." He walked over and sat across from her. "I reviewed your record. You have a history of going above and beyond, staying late with dying patients, helping during breaks, bringing books for the children's ward." "I was just doing what I thought was right." "Exactly," he said. "Which is why I've reversed your suspension. You'll receive full pay for the 3 days." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." "Truly." Dr. Harrison smiled softly. "We're not done. My father specifically asked to see you. He's in room 302, if you're willing." Sarah stood up. "Of course." Robert Miller was sitting up in bed when she entered, connected to monitors but alert. "There she is," he said, smiling. "My guardian angel." "I'm just glad I was there," Sarah said, sitting beside him. "My son tells me you got in trouble for what you did. It's been sorted out." "Good," he said. "Because what you did out there, that wasn't just medical training. That was decency. You saw a person, not a policy." Back in Dr. Harrison's office, Sarah sat again. "Miss Matthews," he said, "are you familiar with the Clinical Nurse Leader program? The leadership position? It's very competitive. We've had an opening for 3 months. It comes with better hours, double your current pay, and the chance to influence patient care across the hospital. I want you to apply." Sarah's jaw dropped. "Me? Yes. I've seen what kind of nurse you are. Leadership is more than policy. It's courage, empathy, and integrity. He handed her a folder. Sarah opened it. Her eyes widened. The salary alone could change her life. I don't know what to say. Say you'll apply. I will. 3 weeks later, Sarah Matthews walked into Riverside General Hospital wearing her new badge. Clinical nurse leader. Her first project? Developing new emergency response guidelines, ones that balance protocol with human judgment. That evening, she brought home groceries, flowers, and her mother's favorite takeout. "What's all this?" her mom asked. "Just celebrating," Sarah said with a smile.